Hey, real quick, just a reminder to subscribe to the channel. That'd be great. Also, we're doing a live show in Atlanta, December 2nd, the Friday night before the SEC Championship game, solidverballive.com. Link down there for tickets.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt, that fine gentleman over there, as always. His name is the illustrious Dan Rubenstein, the 14th. Sir, how are you?
I'm good, Ty. I've had a productive morning. The sun is out. I've already thought about what I'm going to do for lunch. I'm feeling really productive. Once again, I'm ready to rock into this very hopefully informative, opinionated, questionably contented show.
Beautiful. We will get into that questionable content here momentarily. Don't forget this episode, all of our episodes driven by our good friends over at Geico. Verballers.com is where you can go to watch this episode as we record it. If not that, certainly get access to it a little bit early. Last but certainly not least, you can also play in our games and join up in our Discord community. Join up the community. It's a great community of folks just watching college football every Saturday, talking about life in general. Discord is where it's at here in the Verballerhood. Hope you will check it out again at verballers.com. On today's show, we're going to do a very quick speed run of the news. There's not a whole lot to discuss from a news standpoint. As many of you are listening to this, there has been a new batch of playoff rankings released. We are recording prior to that release. So we'll get into that a little bit later on in the week. I suspect we know what the rankings will look like or have an idea for the shape that they will take on a little bit later on once they reveal them. But we'll get into that in more detail on Thursday. And then we're going to play an old game that we played back in January, Dan. There is a brilliant Twitter account called Message Board Geniuses.
Yeah, and I think they have a website, too, where they collect all of their postings and such.
They've done a marvelous job. We are borrowing some of the content from the Twitter feed, from the website, and we are going to put on our tinfoil hats. I've got mine here, which I will put on momentarily, and we're going to talk through what's going on out there in the wide world of college football.
It's been an especially trying present tense and few years for conspiracy theories. Yes, and the way that conspiracy theories have infiltrated popular culture. That said, if there is one area where conspiracy theories infiltrating a topic, college football message boards are the best.
The best.
The absolute best.
The best. So we've collected a curated list of our favorites, which we're going to go through and talk about the veracity of some of these claims, if you will.
Was that a combination of ferocity and veracity? I love it if it was.
Let's get into news. The breaking news that already has been broken many hours ago. Jeff Scott fired at USF. Writing was sort of on the wall for that one. Jeff Scott's been on the hot seat for a while now at USF, but made it official earlier in the week. I have not seen an exhaustive list of names for who could be in the running for that job, but, you know, it's in South Florida. Not a bad gig.
John Gruden's name has come up.
Really?
And, well, he's local to Tampa because South Florida is not in South Florida. It's south of other parts of Florida.
South of other parts of Florida, that's right.
Yes. Yeah, that's why they call it South of Other Parts of Florida University of South of Other Parts. It is potentially a good job. Obviously, Willie Taggart had a good amount of success there, and it's a relatively new program. You can hit the portal hard. You can recruit Florida well. The thing that's probably working against South Florida at the moment is one of the main schools that they were recruiting against, and they have been recruiting against, is about to join the Big 12, is about to join a bigger conference in UCF. I still think it's going to be a money issue in terms of building out the facilities. And I know that they've taken steps forward and just building out the program infrastructure to keep growing along with some of the success that they've had. Not a great era for Dabo Swinney's tree offensively, both internally and externally at the moment, with some struggles that obviously Virginia has had this year with an experienced quarterback, the troubles that USF has obviously had, and now the internal troubles on offense that Clemson can have and most recently had against Notre Dame. But this is not about me making this about Clemson, but I thought it was going to work out a little bit better than it did. I understand where the roster was at when Jeff Scott took over and that an overhauling was needed. And we talked about him hitting the portal pretty hard and looking at Power 5 transfers to come home or to get that opportunity with the Bulls. But no, with how good the American has gotten, It was always going to be uphill, and he was always going to need time if he were going to be the guy. It appears, for reasons both competitive and probably internal, he's not the guy.
No. Well, we'll see. We'll see which direction they decide to go. USF with a coaching vacancy. Some other news around college football. This sort of made headlines. Our guy Hayes Fawcett, who we had on the show way back when, talking about social media graphics, and at the time he was still making stuff on his phone. I'm assuming he's graduated to bigger and better tools now that he's more closely affiliated with On3.
Yes.
But he broke the news that Anthony Hill Jr., one of the top linebackers in the class of 23, would be decommitting from Texas A&M and opening his recruitment back up. This was like big time shockwaves in college football, right? Because the A&M thing has already gone sideways this season. Sort of a lost cause. We're going to talk on Thursday about the game that they've got coming up. They're an underdog at time of recording, underdog against Auburn. But A&M needs to win out in order to make a bowl game. I don't know how likely that is or isn't. Again, a point for further discussion on a later show. But just to build on this already lousy narrative at A&M, you have decommitments like this. I would add that this is on the heels of an all-time great recruiting class by Jimbo Fisher. Sure. So it's not exactly like recruiting is bottoming out, but I suppose when you're in that mindset of doom and gloom and which direction is the program headed, despite all of the steam otherwise, seeing a decommitment like this, and I've seen some of the crystal ball updates now have him going to Texas. That's the prediction.
Sure.
It's not something that feels great in Aggie land.
Well, to be fair, it's November, and the early signing day is next month. So everybody's going to have sort of a white-knuckling month and a half as they try to hold on to or close out their class with coaching changes, with, everything that happens with the portal and people sort of recalculating what they want their class or roster to look like. And so, this is sort of the beginning of whatever it is, 6 weeks of white-knuckling, holding on to your commitments or trying to close on some bigger fish. But you're not wrong that this could be an especially hairy stretch of time for programs who didn't necessarily show out on the field as expected. And Texas A&M, because of the attention that last year's class brought, because of the nature of Jimbo Fisher's fame and visibility and contract and the visibility of the SEC West, things like this are going to get more attention. But I don't think this specific kind of story is unique to Texas A&M. But what is number 1 linebacker in the class, number 17 overall player? Yep. Sure, that's going to make waves. I don't know if it was Hayes Fawcett who broke the story, but it might have just been Anthony Hill, that's his name, who told Anthony Fawcett to make a graphic for him. Yeah. So it was Anthony Hill broke the story.
As one does, but regardless,
yes,
Hayes
totally.
Fawcett had his branding on it, and he, of course, is in tight with a lot of these guys. So we'll see what happens with that recruitment. Again, it is now open for business. 2 other very quick notes here that I wanted to pass along. Did you see the thing with Dan Patrick on Monday?
Yeah, Dan Patrick, who, by the way, I've always been a pretty big fan of.
Love Dan Patrick.
He does a great job.
Great interviewer. Interviewer.
Has dipped his toe, sometimes successfully, sometimes less than successfully, in breaking college football administrative news.
The report was that the Pac-12 was going to add San Diego State.
Yeah.
Soon. Nicole Auerbach, our friend Nicole, quickly refuted that report. Supposedly,
at least the imminence of the report.
The imminence of the report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The source close to the situation told The Athletic that the report is inaccurate. It's been Nicole's understanding that the Pac-12 will do its media deal first before any kind of conference expansion. This is the world we live in now, Dan. You're going to hear about conference expansion for any of the conferences that have teams leaving or even teams that are coming in. That's just the nature of the beast now. Big money sport being college football. So we'll see. I San Diego State would make sense geographically. Would definitely help on the defensive side of things in the Pac-12 with respect to football, maybe not so much on offense.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if you saw the story that broke later on in the day that San Diego State attendance has been so bad in the new stadium that they slashed ticket prices by like 50% for their last 3 games. Not ideal timing. If the story about San Diego State, even if it's not happening soon, but being vetted to eventually join the conference now. It has been a disappointing season after a long stretch of really encouraging seasons for San Diego State. They haven't figured out offense in quite some time. So if you are a Mountain West program, if you are a G5 program, and you are looking to put butts in seats, especially if you are located in a place with many options of other things to do, you got to win, and you got to win in exciting, flashy fashion, probably. If there hasn't been a culture of excitement around San Diego State football locally, it seems. Obviously, the Chargers were the story in that town, and San Diego State is the home program to one of the most excellent NFL players of all time in Marshall Faulk, but it's still an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And there's still not a college football culture down there. In as much as people love the idea of more California eyeballs with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, eyeballs on the Pac-10, 12, whatever conference, San Diego State has a ways.
Yeah.
And hopefully the new stadium is a step in the right direction, but it has not generated the kind of excitement early on that I'm sure the Aztecs have hoped for. The other name, obviously, Fresno State's going to be thrown around there with the Pac-12. Gonzaga being rumored to the Big 12 for basketball only. Seems to be a shot at the Pac-12 because of the geographic footprint of Spokane. UNLV, obviously, has grown in terms of being a sports town with the Raiders and the NHL, of course, moving into Las Vegas. What are they, Golden Knights?
The Golden Knights, yeah, the
Golden Knights, yeah, I just want to get that right. But supposedly, like as you mentioned, it's the TV deal is the priority right now, it seems, for the Pac-12 to get that in place and then figure out where to go from there in terms of a roster of teams and grant of rights and all those things.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And we've heard similar language being included in the Big 12 media deal.
Yeah.
Trying to take into account future expansion. They want to make sure that
they've already expanded, but
they've already expanded.
The Big 12 obviously has reportedly updated its TV deal.
Last, but certainly not least, asked about an unsubstantiated rumor from an Auburn fan-produced website stating there was, quote, mutual interest between an SEC school, it's Auburn, and Dan Lanning, first-year Oregon Ducks coach, said, quote, the last thing I ever want to do is leave, and that there was, quote, a problem in society. Zooming out here, Dan Lanning really sees the field.
Yeah.
Got the all-22. There's a problem in society with those who constantly look for their next professional opportunity. So there you go. I would take that as an emphatic denial that there is any interest of him going to Auburn, really anywhere, right? That was pretty strong. Seems like he's catching on pretty nicely in Eugene. So if he wants to stay, I'm sure they're willing to keep him for as long as he wants to remain in the Pacific Northwest. But Dan Lanning will not be entertaining offers for that Auburn position at the very least.
Yeah, obviously. So Dan Lanning is from Missouri, played at a very small school. So it's not a situation that is apples to apples with Mario Cristobal leaving for Miami, of course, from the city of Miami, and played for Miami and won a ton of games for Miami. Willie Taggart growing up not far from Florida State and grew up a Florida State fan. There is not that connective tissue with Dan Lanning specifically to Auburn beyond having a lot of success coaching and working in the SEC. It wasn't that line was the actual line that I didn't like, because guess what? You should always look for the next professional opportunity. If you're not happy, if you're not fulfilled, if you don't think you're making as much money as you should be in your mind, look to better your life and your happiness and your financial. Like, I'm okay with that. Do whatever you want, if it's a financial thing or if it's a happiness thing. But he also mentioned that his 11-year-old has lived in 8 states. Ooh. And he was like, the last thing I want to do is uproot my family again. And he also mentioned, and this was a great, for Oregon fans, thing to hear, was a lot of guys, this is me paraphrasing, I don't know if you have the quote in front of you, but it was basically like a lot of guys do well here and then do less well elsewhere.
Ooh, you like that one.
When they leave. And so I like that's the red meat for the Oregon fan base. And so he basically, I think the phrasing he used was, everybody always thinks the grass is greener elsewhere, and the grass is pretty damn green in Eugene. So
it rains all the time. It has no choice.
It's a nice place, Ty. I think you'd like it a lot. It's very golf and beer forward. I think you'd like it, but as somebody who attended the school for 4 years, I can also attest November through April can be gray and damp. And that's what I guess gets the grass particularly green in the summer. Can we transition out of that really quickly to something else?
Please.
That's been, I mean, what is the phrase that you like to use? That's been grinding my gears.
It's been grinding your gears.
So I hold two thoughts to be true as it relates to the college football playoff, Oregon or whoever else. I don't think Oregon at the moment is a playoff caliber team because of their defense. And as an Oregon fan, I'd much rather see them play an excellent team in the Rose Bowl or something, Michigan, Ohio State, TCU, something like that.
So you're afraid.
I think that would,
you're afraid.
I'm not afraid. I just know this is year one of the Dan Lanning era. And
sounds a little bit like there is some fear, but continue.
I've watched Oregon against a playoff
Continue. No,
caliber
I don't
team
want
in Georgia.
I'm sure you have a very valid point. I don't want to derail your conversation.
It doesn't matter what I am.
Sounds a little bit like fear. Continue.
I think Notre Dame fans should be more scared and take this tact more often after what you guys have done in the playoff. Yeah.
When you got Drew Pine, you have nothing to worry about. Continue.
That's true.
Continue.
Fair enough. No, I'm just, the resume thing is always interesting to me because we seem to shift how we view losses or wins. And I wanted to pick your brain because I'm too close to with Oregon. Because part of me says, and I've said this for years, that how you perform against a playoff team during the season is meaningful. Like when Notre Dame specifically lost to Clemson in the manner in which they did when they were a brief ACC team in the ACC championship game I think it was like 2 weeks before the playoff, right? And that year was mid-December ahead of a playoff in early January. I said that was a disqualifying loss. And Notre Dame still got in because of the bulk of their resume otherwise. And that they had beat Clemson earlier with Clemson's backup quarterback. But whatever, a win is a win is a win.
Sure.
My point is the context of Oregon and how they should be evaluated is, they got completely drilled and demolished by a playoff team in week one and game one of a new coach and a new quarterback. And my feeling is that was not representative of what Oregon will probably look like after 12 games, with the bulk of their impressive wins coming likely from, if they're able to win, Utah, USC, Washington, Oregon State, teams like that. That their schedule has not been crazy impressive, and they've performed like a playoff team would against some pretty bad competition. My question to you is, how would you rank resume items in terms of a bad loss to a great team, a good loss to an okay team? Like, I know it's a case-by-case situation, and I pulled some recent losses from playoff teams, like Ohio State losing by 2 touchdowns to Virginia Tech early on in the season.
Right.
Or Michigan State losing to, I think it was a 5-7, Michigan State losing to a 5-7 Nebraska team. A 4-8 Syracuse team beats a Clemson team that makes the playoff. Oklahoma loses to a 5-7 Texas team. And so I know there's no such thing as precedent because the goalposts move every year and the actual committee changes pretty often. But in your view, how should we evaluate resume items when it comes to winning and losing and the manner in which and the opponent to which a team wins or loses or beats?
Well, I mean, I think Oregon's actually a really good example.
Right.
I am always interested in the very early season throttling against a good team.
Mm-hmm.
So, case in point, neutral site game, week 1. Oregon loses by what, 46?
49-3, can confirm.
46 points. They lost handily to Georgia. The narrative's changed so much, though, with respect to Oregon, right? It's clear that Oregon has improved since that game. So, I think despite the fact that it was a really bad loss, I do think that I personally value it a little bit less because the team that you get at the end of the season oftentimes is so different than the one you got at the beginning of the season that you need to take that into account. And I know the playoff committee has taken that into account at various points throughout the playoff era. So I think I would probably fall down on that side of the fence with respect to the big loss and when it happens. And I think context is really important. Obviously, if you get drilled week 12 against the top 10 team, you know, you might still have a chance to get in depending on how things break. But I tend to value that loss a little bit more. I think it's a better predictor for how good a team is or isn't because at that point in the season, it's definitely more of a finished product. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I value wins over losses, but I think you still have to. And look, Oregon since Georgia has played one good team in UCLA. And so I don't fully know how good or not good Oregon is. I know their defense probably has not performed to the level that I would hope it to be at, given the slate of opponents that they've faced. But no, I saw our friend Ari Wasserman wrote yesterday that Oregon is clearly the best Pac-12 team, and if they win out, they would have a worse resume than a UCLA team or USC team that wins out. And I don't know. I think if you actually watch some of the USC and UCLA games, and I'm not implying that Ari hasn't, but they play in a time zone in which he doesn't live, like USC has needed all 4 quarters to beat a lot of kind of not impressive teams. Well, and same goes for UCLA.
And I love Ari, but that's a bad take.
Right.
It's a bad take because Oregon beat UCLA.
Right. No, but he's saying UCLA losing to Oregon by whatever they lost, in double digits, is more impressive than losing by 46 to Georgia, whereas Georgia's way better than Oregon.
I don't buy that at all. I think it's a bad take, and I love Ari, but I don't agree with that at all. And the good news for Oregon is they could potentially get a crack at UCLA again. They could get a crack at USC. I think there is room to grow on that schedule. As you're bringing this up, another team that comes to mind, and we saw it this weekend.
Let's talk.
Tennessee. Tennessee loses by 14 on the road at Georgia. Tennessee was never close in that game. That game was a runaway train.
That was a garbage time touchdown
exactly
late in that game in the sludge. Yeah.
I've heard this a lot, and I mean, I think I said it on our recap show that for me, I thought that the path to get into the playoff for Tennessee had narrowed significantly. Mm-hmm. And some folks asked about that. I stand by that. I mean, obviously they need a little bit of help to worm their way back into this thing. But we know that either Ohio State or Michigan is going to lose. We know that there is wiggle room in that top tier. I don't know where they're going to put Tennessee after this week, but we know that there is wiggle room above them and even below them with TCU. Mm-hmm. TCU could lose this weekend. They're a 7-point dog this weekend on the road against Texas. So the point is that Tennessee needs help, but I do think it's an interesting point for discussion. Obviously, mutual opponent in Georgia. The manner that Tennessee lost, the score was much different. Don't get me wrong. Right. But the manner in which Tennessee lost at this late stage of the season was like not too unlike the way Oregon lost way back in week 1. Score very different. I get it. But in both cases, 2 teams just fully dominated by the Georgia Bulldogs.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a magnitude thing, but not a big picture thing. They were not competitive with Tennessee.
No.
Or excuse me, Tennessee was not competitive with Georgia. I think the viewpoint is generally TCU is a cute story, which I don't fully agree with, and will lose to somebody these next few weeks, and they're not being taken seriously, whether it's because of their propensity to needing to come back against decent teams and not making statements against those teams every week, or the defense is being doubted now that the health is an issue for TCU. I think that's all reasonable. And I think TCU is a prime example of do not feel disrespected because you are not ranked in the top 4. You have a new coach who has completely turned things around immediately, and it's all gravy. Wherever you end up, TCU is going from being a disaster, a catastrophic team under Gary Patterson and that staff that he handpicked to a 10+ win team. That's incredible. And anything else like that to me is like when you say like, oh, are you scared? It's not a matter of being scared. It's a matter of this team hasn't been built yet. TCU hasn't been built. Oregon hasn't been built yet under first-year coaches. It should just be viewed as exciting to see that this is what is happening with, Max Duggan, who didn't win the starting job, and Bo Nix, who came in after a really up and down career at Auburn and gets this fresh start. Like, we should appreciate excellence and not put excellence into the playoff jar just because we can. So that's my viewpoint on it. Tennessee is probably in a decent position, given the rest of their schedule, given that they don't have to face the SEC West champion again, LSU once again, who seems to have only gotten better since they played. But head-to-head, it's a good place to be. It's a good
place to be. It's absolutely a good place to be. One final point in TCU, and I want people to write in, solver@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on this whole issue of resume and where things should or shouldn't rank out. TCU, I don't care where they're ranked. in the new version of the college football playoff poll. By the time all is said and done, if TCU wins out, they'll have wins on the road over Baylor and Texas, over SMU, which is going to be a bowl team.
Yeah.
They also will have wins over other bowl teams that I presume will get there if they're not there already. Oklahoma, I think, will get the 6 wins.
Yeah, Kansas State.
Probably this weekend. Kansas could finish with 8 wins. Who knows? Kansas State, another possible 8-win team. Oklahoma State's already qualified for a bowl. I don't know what's going on with them. They're kind of a mess right now.
No, they're real beat up.
Spencer Sanders and all. I mean, it's not a great situation in Stillwater, but it's like 7 bowl teams here, potential bowl teams that they would have beaten. Wasn't always the prettiest, but that's a pretty strong resume. Strong resume. So if they win out, it's hard to keep them out of the playoff. Certainly they would get a crack at somebody in the Big 12 championship game, but I think they're in a prime position. All they have to do is keep winning.
The good news is we get to say the same thing we say every year in early November, Ty. It generally sorts itself out. Generally, the gods above governing over college football weirdness, they get going with the, what about if this team loses unexpectedly? Oh, what if this team upsets this team unexpectedly? And it all sort of sorts itself out. And that's the good news. I hope we see, they say this every year, as few, if any, reruns as humanly possible. That's my goal for the college football playoff. Great football, great stories, fewest reruns possible.
Dan, can you play that old AOL connection sound, please?
You know I'm going to.
Do you remember when you try to sign on and it didn't get to that point? It just sort of would hang or it would not do anything at all?
I remember we've actually done a show about 90s internet things. The greatest feeling you can have as a youth in, 1997, 1996, 1998, who had AOL. The greatest feeling is you sign on, you get online, you get the welcome, you've got mail, whatever. And there is a message there waiting for you from a crush.
Yeah.
You sign on to AOL Instant Messenger and you get a message from a crush. Or just you're sitting there and all of a sudden you hear that door open.
Yeah.
And there's that crush. Like, is this going to be the day? And I think there's a lot of overlap there with college football fandom of, is this going to be the day?
Man, what a memory. And as you bring that up now, I think of away messages.
Of course.
I think of my own personal evolution from song lyrics.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
On the away message all the way through to like doing work. This maturation of whatever the message was, trying to get noticed all the way through to not really giving a damn.
You can evolve from the song lyrics to just like some people ... And you're like, what does he mean? What does she mean? And I think that's a very good segue to college football fandom online in the year of our Lord 2022. So we have selected some message board geniuses posts, generally from, the 24/7 or Rivals, whoever, message boards, a lot of which happen during or after a game that melts the brains of a team's fans. Should we go? These are some recent ones from the Twitter feed and from the top 25 of October. I like to check in. We can watch these games. We can pore over stats. We can rewatch these games and form our own opinions. But we are never going to be in the marrow of these programs.
No.
Like fans are.
No.
And so I think this is important to sort of get inside the brains of people who are so invested in these teams. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I want to give a shout out again to the account that collects all of these. It is Board Geniuses, BOARD Geniuses.
It works on 2 levels. It's great.
Well, the other Board Genius bought Twitter, but this is the better account. Board Geniuses on Twitter. Messageboardgeniuses.com is the website. They do a phenomenal job. They've got a podcast, all sorts of stuff out there. Go and check them out. We're very much borrowing the content that they put forth, and we are appreciative.
They're borrowing content themselves.
Of course. But we appreciate the hard work that they put in here.
Yes, A+ attribution, Ty.
Thank you. Let's get to our first post, Dan. You want to read it off? Oh, I need to put my tinfoil hat on.
You can choose. This is your choice. Do you want Texas? Do you want Auburn? Do you want Texas A&M? Or do you want Tennessee?
Oh, I need Texas A&M, man.
Okay. So Texas A&M is a rich treasure trove. This is from Tex Ags, the notable Texas A&M message board. GoFundMe for Hugh Freeze plus hookers equals SEC greatness. I think we can get him cheap. Just keep some hookers on the side. It's the easiest and most financially responsible option. Ty.
Yeah.
You're now wearing your tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you categorize sex workers, Ty. But it doesn't seem like this is a long-term, because I want to take all these seriously. I want to give them the validity that college football fandom demands. Do you think it's possible that, one, if Texas A&M gets rid of Jimbo Fisher, that Hugh Freeze could come in, and do you think a key to his success is the ability to do consistent business with sex workers, as has been the accusation with regard to massage parlors and burner phones during his time at Ole Miss? Do you think that is a viable path forward for Texas A&M to take the next step?
I mean, I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, so the definition of viable is perhaps a little bit different than if I take this thing off. But
right.
What I appreciate by the poster here is the fact that he or she is willing to go to extreme measures,
of course,
to seal the deal here, right? Like, they see what they want. They suspect, based on previous behavior, that this is something that Hugh Freeze might find attractive, bring him to College Station. Once he's there, help him succeed. And now they're putting pen to paper. They're saying, we need to make this happen. So I guess on some level, I sort of admire the creativity. Still don't know if it's a great PR news story, though. Like, these things have a way of getting out, especially if things don't go well. If Hugh Freeze starts 3-6, the way Jimbo Fisher has started this season. Yeah. And then there is kind of that seedier underbelly to the agreement. You could see that ultimately being something that ends up on Twitter, that ends up taking him down and sends him back to an independent or group of 5 school.
See, what I would want from this situation, if Hugh Freeze is enthusiastic about working at Texas A&M, which I have no idea if that's the case, if he's able to mount an offense, which it seems that that's something he's been successful doing, is developing offenses wherever he goes, my priority here would be to see to it that the agreement with said sex workers results in all sorts of really good life benefits for them. Yeah. Like, I want them on the Texas A&M payroll in no-show positions, essentially. I want health insurance. I want dental. I want this to be a fully unofficial, official role that just sort of gets things down on paper so there's no confusion.
There's no confusion.
That's who I'm most concerned about in this transaction. I don't really care about Hugh Freeze in this transaction. If he's able to get things going for the A&M offense and the A&M program and recruiting and everything like that, that's terrific. I just don't want them to be seen as pawns.
I couldn't agree more. By the way, on the point of Hugh Freeze either wanting the Auburn job or really any job, I remember the posting from Dennis Dodd once the coaching carousel started spinning earlier and earlier every year. It was like week 2 this year. And he had mentioned Hugh Freeze's name, that Hugh Freeze is almost desperate to get another big-time job. Right. And so Brandon Marcello went out and got a quote from Hugh Freeze. Quote, "I don't know that Auburn wants me. I have no clue. I know this. I have won everywhere I've been, and my staff and kids have turned programs around fast. It's our culture that we instill. I know we do that, and the proof is in the pudding." That to me sounds like a guy who is entertaining offers.
Yes.
You do not say that if you are fine with your current circumstance. So maybe he enjoys his time at Liberty, but he's clearly putting his name out there as somebody who could be interested.
I mean, Houston's not terribly far away from College Station, right?
I don't believe so. No, it's close.
I think it's within a couple hours.
Yeah.
You have to think that there's a big to huge medical supply company that can help him out with any of his hospital bed needs.
Oh, my gosh.
Should anything flare up once again.
One of the more ridiculous screen grabs of all time. College football, him in the bed.
It was pretty perfect. So I hope everything, because I never hope that anybody's, physically unable. So I hope that he's able to go moving forward. But If he's not, it's probably nicer than it is not to be near a big city that can accommodate those needs.
I agree. You want to go to the next one?
Let's go to the next one. Which school, Ty?
Let's go Auburn.
You want to go Auburn? Okay.
I do.
Okay. Does Will Muschamp get a look from Auburn? Get a look for Auburn head coach? I think we'd be crazy not to give him a hard look. This is from Rivals in Auburn Sports. I think we'd be crazy not to give him a hard look. SEC head coaching experience, check. Elite recruiter, check. I think both of those things are true. I mean, he's recruited top players to Florida and South Carolina. Elite X's and O's coach, double check. Probably true. He's fielded some very, very good defenses. Handsome, triple check. So he is better at being handsome, naturally or with effort, than he is at recruiting players, coaching, or coming up with scheme for a defense. If we don't get Dion, then give me Coach Boom, War Damn Eagle.
Wow.
So which of these, if any, do you take exception to? He does have SEC head coaching experience. Do you believe him to be an elite recruiter, a great X's and O's coach, and for sure, triple check, handsome?
I mean, yeah, sure. Like,
do you think Will Muschamp gets a look?
No. Come on, man. Why? He's a name. He's a name. You know he'd be interested.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because you know he'd be interested does not mean you should reach out to him.
Right.
I'm hopeful that if you are Auburn, you are aspiring for something a little bit more than one William Muschamp, who we've seen twice prior now in the SEC.
Yeah.
And failed both
and
times.
Has been a defensive coordinator for Auburn.
Been a defensive coordinator for Auburn, right? So he's got familiarity with the area and all that. And he's been, over his time as a college football coach, pretty good defensive coordinator, right? Objectively so.
Yeah.
But as a head coach, no, you don't want that. Can you imagine the tire fire that would be? Can you imagine if after all of this strife, so Gus Malzahn's gone, they decide they're going to get rid of Brian Harsin a year and a half into this thing. The program's in disarray. There are already going to be people transferring left and right, maybe even more than transferred last season, like last offseason. Will Muschamp?
Do you think it could be a good experiment to giving somebody more power behind the scenes, whereas like Will Muschamp is sort of a figurehead, makes defensive decisions, is involved in recruiting, shakes all the hands of Auburn boosters who like him and goes to the golf outings and Bo Jackson's, bike thing across Alabama, all that kind of stuff. And he's literally locked out of the offensive rooms. He literally cannot get into the offensive meeting rooms. All of his calls are blocked to offensive assistants. Is that the new model where you bring in somebody as that kind of figurehead to just only worry about defense? He can't even call timeouts during games. He doesn't need, like, the channel doesn't work to his headset when Auburn is on offense. Like, he just can't give input.
This is the Dwight Schrute fake wheel on Lake Wallen Paw Pack.
Yes. That there is a very specific role that Will Muschamp inhabits that makes people behind the scenes happy, but they decide on who to spend, $1.5 million on to run the offense. That it's almost like a co-head situation.
Man, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel if you're going Will Muschamp.
Second question, is Will Muschamp triple check handsome in your mind?
Sure.
What do you mean, sure?
Sure.
If you're talking about A++.
He's a handsome, he's got a friendly face, yeah.
He's got a friendly face?
Yeah, most of the time when he's not yelling.
I think he would, in terms of pure looks, if Will Muschamp appeared in SEC territory on your Bumbles, on your Hinges, I think he would probably do well. I think there is a size to him, an acreage, right? You see he's a broad dude, has his hair. There's an intensity, a steeliness to him. I can't speak in details about his face or about, his vibe.
I just slacked you an image of Will Muschamp.
Okay. Is this in coaching gear or is this in civilian? Okay, so
he doesn't
tan.
He doesn't not look like the bigger, more successful version of Kirby Smart. Like his older brother, maybe his younger brother who runs a hedge fund
Yeah.
and has a nicer car. He doesn't not look like that guy.
He sort of looks like a beefy Tony Danza in this shot.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a great hairline, got the salt and pepper thing going on.
Yep.
Shirt's ironed.
Look at that friendly face. He's smiling in this photo.
I think you could do worse than Coach Boom. I'm not there. Like, I would have to save triple check handsome for probably others.
All right. Let's go to the next one. What are my team options here?
We can go Tennessee. We can go Texas.
Let's go Texas. Yeah. Let's go
All right,
Texas.
here we go. This is from Inside Texas. My wife and I met one of our current commits' parents at a swingers get-together this weekend, is how this post begins.
Okay.
Their son told them some of the recruits are worried that not only is Toviano spying for LSU, but that the Hill decommitment is an elaborate scheme for Hill to get in with the Texas recruits and start pushing them to A&M.
Oh, I love this energy. I love this energy.
Double agents. The player says their recruiting has been so bad, they are desperate. Level 2, so take it for what it's worth.
Wow. I love this energy. This is what I am here for.
Okay, so it's Javian Toviano is a current, let's see, he's a corner who is not committed anywhere. He is from Arlington. He's a 4-star, the number 8 corner in the country, class of 2023, finalist Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma, for whatever that's worth.
Do you think there's a market for this? Do you think there's an NIL market or some sort of backdoor agreement that can be brokered on behalf of one school to infiltrate the recruiting class of another and recruit away?
So there have been stories about this. I think it's legit. I think it's legit that a player is so solidly committed and enthusiastic about where they're committed to, and then they sort of figure out where a big recruiting weekend is going to be with a school that's still recruiting them.
Yeah.
And they huddle up, football term, with the head coach or the head of player personnel or whatever, and be like, if you want to go to Athens, if you want to go to LA, if you want to go to Austin, if you want to go to Columbus and plant a couple, we need some receivers, plant a couple, we need some offensive linemen, maybe that's a successful ploy to be had. So anything goes in recruiting, Ty.
Oh, yeah.
So you can laugh this off. I'm not saying you specifically. One can laugh this off as silly and conspiratorial, but I'm willing to believe. I'm always willing to believe something wild.
I don't think this is far-fetched at all. What I want to know more about is why the poster chose to add the context of we met at a swingers gather.
Right. So here's the thing with that entry into this post. You don't need to say where you met the parents.
No.
I'm not saying anything's wrong with swinging, Ty. Obviously, you can speak to that lifestyle more than I can. I learned something, by the way, from our good friend Adam Amin. I had no idea. I went and got tacos with him that the pineapple is a symbol of swinging.
Oh.
That if you drive by somebody's house and there's like a little pineapple statue or a pineapple figurine or some sort of pineapple decor outside of somebody's house, that's like the Krispy Kreme wink and nod that something fresh is happening inside. So
you guys should put that on Extra Nuggets.
If it comes up, we absolutely will put that on our Extra Nuggets podcast. But we went to a taco spot and they were selling a pineapple hat. And I was like, oh, what a cool hat. Like all pastor. And like, well, it also could send a message that you are part of a very specific lifestyle. I just want to know how that, I understand. My guess is you make small talk with people at a function.
Yeah.
And you sort of get to know them because you don't just get into it, is
Right.
my understanding.
Everything's online these days, Dan.
No, I know, but you still, like, once you're in person, to me, you want to get comfortable with somebody. You want to sort of feel out the situation, for lack of a better term. So somebody is telling somebody that they're a gigantic Texas fan. And then that other somebody is saying, what a coincidence. What a crazy world.
Yeah.
Got a couple connections. Tell me more.
Right.
The other thing I want to know is, did this lead to further activity? This sort of conspiratorial Texas recruiting.
It depends on the validity of the information.
Was it more than just a social lubricant, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how accurate the info is.
That's true.
I mean, you know how these message boards are. People will do anything for a real source.
And do you segue bluntly, or is it a more gradual segue where you're talking about it, you're talking about this corner commitment, this quarterback, and you're talking about Arch Manning, and you're talking about all these guys committed to this, I think it's a really good Texas class. And then is it just, so anyway,
yeah.
Linda.
I feel like it's a cheeky enough subject.
Yeah.
The double agent thing. That you can kind of use that as a natural transition into. So Linda, you know.
Right.
I do want to hear more though from this poster. This was the one that had me the most intrigued.
Was it, by the way, I'm trying to look back at the post here. All it says is my wife and I met one of our current commits' parents at a swingers get together this weekend. So it may have been after the fact.
Yeah.
It may have been post where everybody's just chilling. I have no idea what these events are.
There are many
like,
layers
clearly.
to this college football onion, Dan.
Apparently, it's an upside down pineapple.
Upside down
the symbol. An upside down pineapple, because a pineapple, people watching along on verballers.com are pointing out that the pineapple is a symbol of hospitality. So the upside down pineapple is a symbol of
a little extra hospitality.
a little
yeah.
zazz.
A little zazz. Thank you.
All right, we have Tennessee left.
Let's do Tennessee. Let's close it out.
By the way, we got an email accusing mostly me of shoehorning in the nicknames on Saturdays and saying that they're corny and I'm horny and everything. And I looked it up, and I was right, by the way, about it being a super moist Saturday affecting things. Was I not, Ty? The rain.
I mean, it was more of a wind situation, but it was not moist.
There's moisture in the air. We can right now buy for like $14 hornycornyandright.com if we want it. If we want it.
I don't want that.
We can make shirts? No? Okay.
You can make shirts. I'm good.
Okay.
To Tennessee.
Tennessee, speaking of which, this comes to us from Vol Nation.
Beautiful.
This is a bigger one, Ty. I was thinking about what makes this team really special, talking about the Vols, and much stronger than the sum of its parts. When you just look at our level of talent, it's hard to imagine that we would be where we are. That got me to thinking about something Colin Cowherd said years ago.
Oh, boy.
Let me stop you right there. Take a beat. Okay. I think it was something about good-looking players making good quarterbacks because of confidence or something. That got me to thinking about how much confidence this team always seems to play with, how good-looking, not in a weird way, our star players are. It's okay to call people good-looking. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
If you look at Hooker or Tillman, each one of them has a terrific smile and would make them super attractive to the ladies. Even if you look at our backup quarterback, Joe Milton, he's got an amazing body. Does anyone have a picture that was posted last year on Vol Nation of him practicing without his shirt on? His chest and abs are ridiculously defined, almost like a sculpture. Even our best defensive players, like Banks, are objectively really attractive guys. I think the confidence that these guys have had their entire lives from being good-looking and probably chased by the ladies carries over onto the field. They are always so poised and confident. Anyway, I always thought that Cowherd was one of the smartest guys around. Let's take another beat. Let's take a quick beat.
Pause.
And when it comes to confidence and attractiveness, I think he might be onto something. Obviously, we wouldn't just go out and try to recruit a bunch of Zac Efrons. I pause once more. Good reference point, though. Good looking dude. But it's cool to see how it all works out with a confident team. It might be something that we use in quarterback recruiting in the future. Look at guys like Brady and Goff. I pause again. Those guys can basically be models. And some of our best quarterbacks like Hooker, Ainge, and the Iceman were really good-looking guys. So,
wow.
This is Volos or Volos, however he's pronouncing his screen name or she's pronouncing her screen name. Do you believe in attractive privilege when it comes to college football performance? Are the best Notre Dame and Penn State players in recent memory, because you follow those two teams closer than others, objectively more handsome than more failed players?
I love the energy off this one.
Of course.
That was like 500 words long.
Agree.
Somebody put some thought into that, and I doubly appreciate the fact that the poster said, "Look, I don't want to be weird about this," but then proceeded to get weirder and weirder as the post went on.
Yes.
Sort of makes that's the hallmark of any of these great postings.
My favorite part of that was, does anybody have that picture from Joe Milton when he was throwing shirtless? As if somebody has a repository of images. Like, I got it right here. Yeah. Ready to go. Yeah.
So the notion that maybe Tennessee should recruit based on looks is interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting zag that you don't often hear in the world of recruiting. We're close to a lot of these guys who cover recruiting much more closely than we do, whether it's Ari or Brandon or... Haven't heard them mention this one, really. Haven't heard this come up, and it is something... Maybe you can text Brandon now and see if it's something that he and the 24/7 team have considered when ranking prospects.
So I have some thoughts on this. I don't know if you have any more thoughts.
Continue.
By the way, Aaron in our comments mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo, sure.
Objectively good-looking,
Objectively
successful quarterback.
Dude. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so my first thought is, I think most quarterbacks are going to have, like, they're going to be fit, right? Like, in terms of fitness, like, you're playing high-level college football. It's kind of hard to do if you're sloppy. All due respect to some, pictures of, who was it, Mac Jones, who are like, ooh, that's not what I expected. All due respect. He who doesn't have that body cast the first stone. That's me. I do not have a chiseled body. But the other thing I thought about, and my intention is not to be mean here, I promise you. The best quarterback in the history of Tennessee football is not somebody who I'd immediately say, looker.
Yeah, no.
Peyton Manning does not necessarily seem like he is or has ever been catwalk material.
No.
I don't know if there is a Peyton Manning beefcake calendar to be found on eBay or something.
Right.
So I think that probably knocks the argument down a little bit, but that said, Ty, I think there is something to attractiveness privilege. I think we generally believe attractive people to be more successful and smarter just because of how they look. I think that's kind of well documented, that people can ascend higher in life and in society if they happen to have more symmetrical faces and have broad shoulders if you're a dude or whatever. If you have the look, I think there is a leg up to be had if you don't look like a swamp monster. But I think you could probably look at a number of wildly unsuccessful college football teams and find some handsome dudes in key positions for those teams.
I mean, just look at coaches. We were talking about Will Muschamp.
Sure.
Sure, there's a confidence that comes with it. Yeah, of course there's a confidence that comes with it. There's a confidence of being the star player on your high school team or the star player in your college team. Being in any position of prominence like that. I would imagine if these guys went out on the town and were looking for a date, they wouldn't have trouble finding one. Just because of their position. I don't know if there's a whole lot of correlation to the looks department. I think their stature on campus, their stature within their community is what elevates them. That's what gives them the confidence, not necessarily what they look like. Now, to your point, sure, they've done scientific studies about face symmetry and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe those folks have a leg up on society, getting to places of, greater earning potential, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
I love the energy of this post. I mean, part of the game when it comes to all things message board posting is writing something unique, trying to stand out from the crowd, trying to zag when others will zig.
Well, it's cracking the code, right? It's becoming
making people
whoever
think,
it is,
making people think on a different level.
Becoming David Epstein, becoming Malcolm Gladwell. We're like, aha, this is the formula.
Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that they went a different direction with this. I don't believe there's much correlation here.
I don't think so either.
I don't. You got to text Brandon. Text Brandon before we get off this, and just Just see if it's something that they've considered when they're in their war room, or Bud. Talk to Bud, see what Bud thinks. But I'm probably gonna take a hard pass on this one.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a random sampling. But again, as somebody who always, whether it's for wagering purposes, whether it's for just figuring out who's better or not better, I tend to look at things like pressure rate or ability to stop big plays or what you're able to generate explosive play wise. But maybe we should be looking for 4K photos and going like, I don't know, man. Yeah. This Aiden O'Connell, I think, is probably better looking than blah blah blah. Like, I don't think that's probably something.
He runs a 5'8" 40, but look at his Facebook profile. I mean, just look at it. Look at the guy beaming from ear to ear.
I would argue, again, this is just me, Jalen Hyatt's speed and ability as a receiver.
Right.
The offensive line's evolution, the defense getting better over the course of the season. Obviously, Hendon Hooker's high ceiling, probably more to do with hard work and dedication and ability developed over time.
Did you mention Joe Milton with the shirt off? I didn't.
Did not mention Joe Milton without a shirt off.
Okay.
I think that's probably a more reliable factor to point to for Tennessee's incredible season.
I'd be interested to get more feedback from the Verballerhood on this one.
I want to see. They only posted this comment.
Yeah.
I want to see what the responses were. Like, was everybody just saying, ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't think about it. Makes you think.
Just like an emoji with an NFM, right?
Yeah.
Just want to give some approval. Thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the thinking emoji. Yeah.
Yeah. You think about some of the recent quarterbacks who really tore it up in college football. And I don't know if to a man we're talking about that kind of privilege.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and call people ugly, other than Peyton Manning, apparently. I don't think Peyton Manning's ugly. I just don't think, again, this is this person's choice of words. I don't think he's a Zac Efron.
No.
Is what I'm saying here.
Peyton Manning has enough money in the bank to buy this show and our entire lives if he really wanted to. So he's in a position that if he wants to get the upper hand here, he can.
I'm saying I'm not. You cannot find a beefcake calendar with me as Mr. March. You just can't. I'm not speaking above anybody. I'm trying to objectively from afar say, well, I don't know.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Message Board Geniuses. Go and check them out. Board Geniuses. BOARD Geniuses on Twitter.
Yeah.
That is where you can find these posts, among many others. MessageBoardGeniuses.com. We don't know those guys, but they do a great job. We've tweeted at them before. We've retweeted some of their stuff. So hope they don't mind us borrowing some of their material, some of their borrowed material, as you pointed out rightfully before. But
by the way, another theme that I found, which we don't really have to get into specifically, when fans are sick of their coach or they're in the middle of a terrible performance, they're like, we got to find a way to get rid of this guy. Whether it's Texas A&M fans with Jimbo Fisher or Brian Harsin and Auburn fans or whatever. One of the theories that's getting floated at multiple places, or one of the ideas that's getting floated at multiple places, is basically to smoke them out. Like, don't fire them with no cause and be forced to pay a buyout. But transfer them to do something else within the football program that's not coaching and force their hand to quit rather than fire them. So basically say, Jimbo Fisher, you are now serving food at the training table.
Yeah.
Or Brian Harsin, you now are driving the equipment bus. And that's going to piss them off so much, as if their contract doesn't explicitly say duties as head coach.
I mean, this is a tried and true practice. We saw it in Office Space. We saw it in Seinfeld when they tried to sweat George out.
Yep.
I mean, gosh, there's so many instances of this. They keep trying to make it harder. Major League, the whole premise of Major League One was, you're going to take away all the luxuries, try and get them to quit.
Yeah. I appreciate the inventiveness of, we don't want to pay out this contract, so what if we? I love it. I absolutely love it. You know what, Ty? I've traveled more than you have across this college football land because of my days at SI. It may sound like these are just people in front of laptops on their couches, and they're so disconnected from reality. These people go to games, Ty. These are real humans that are not afraid to discuss their plans and ideas and theories in person to people with microphones and cameras and notepads. And that's something else that a lot of the people that are highlighted on these sites and these feeds stand by their thinking. And I love it.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't mention the one post. They have a post on their website, their top 15 moments from October. And there was one from a Florida State fan. I don't know if you remember this one. I sent you a message about it.
Oh, yeah.
There was a Florida State fan says, this is on War Chant, the way FSU has played the last 3 weeks has put a lot of doubt in the Norvell era. Now, if things go, by the way, this is posted, I don't know when
this is a while ago. They were on a losing streak, yeah.
Now, if things go sideways, the rest of the season, I think FSU needs to make a run at Kirk Ferentz.
Kirk Ferentz.
Iowa fans are tired of him anyway, and he may need a change of scenery. I cannot imagine a worse fit than Kirk Ferentz going to Tallahassee. I continue. Tough coach, great defenses. Just don't let him bring his son. Everybody agrees on that. As offensive coordinator, I think it could potentially be a home run hire.
You could just hire their defensive coordinator.
Kirk
there
Ferentz.
are other guys.
I want to know what Kirk Ferentz's agent has to say about that one.
Hire
Kirk
Phil
Ferentz
Parker.
may not even know about the state of Florida. That's how big the blinders are that he's got.
Oh, he's heard things. He's won bowl games. That's great. I love that.
That is just
terrific. You know what
terrific.
that speaks to? That speaks to how much this sport and online culture of this sport, as great and as entertaining as it can be, just absolutely poisons all of our minds.
Kirk
and
Ferentz.
I think in like 37 different ways every game. Like somebody doesn't complete an easy-ish third down pass, it's fire this guy, change this, kick him out, do that. And then all of a sudden you do something correct. It's we need to pay him everything we've got to keep him. And it's the range of emotions that happens in huge Alabama games, tiny Mountain West games, and everything, MAC games, everything. Even if they don't have huge fan bases, you're going to find that pocket of just otherwise somewhat hopefully normal people whose brains just turn to guacamole during games.
If you propose this trade to Iowa fans and said you can get Mike Norvell, you have to trade Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz, I got to believe 80% of the Iowa fan base would be like, yep, cool, done. Don't know anything about Mike Norvell. Got a very strong hairline, a lot like salt and pepper. Definitely younger. Take it in a heartbeat. That's all
it's possible. I think there's still a lot of love for Kirk Ferentz probably in that fan base. They've been broken.
That's all I got, Dan.
Message board geniuses.
Message board geniuses. Board geniuses on Twitter. We appreciate their hard work. Always a bit of a respite here for us, especially during the season, to go into some of the lunacy that makes college football so damn special. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you like our show. We have got our Week 11 Picks podcast dropping on Thursday morning. One more time, verballers.com is where you can go if you want to be part of our exclusive Verballer community. We got Discord, we got early access benefits, I got a whole host of other things. Vote in the poll. Every Sunday morning you can vote in the top 10 poll. That we post out to social media. That's going to continue on and get only more interesting as the season gets deeper into the month of November. Verballers.com, verballers.com. And last but certainly not least, solidverballive.com, Dan. We're going to be in Atlanta the night before the SEC championship, the night of the Pac-12 championship. We are going to be inducting people, places, college football entities into our own make-believe College Football Hall of Fame. Not affiliated with the actual College Football Hall of Fame.
Again, we have offered to set up a solid verbal yurt with an exhibition of all of our inductees right there in the parking lot of the College Football Hall of Fame, to be paid for by the College Football Hall of Fame.
They would have to defray the cost of that.
Do all the arranging, but yes, we would show up to a ribbon cutting. Absolutely.
SolidVerbalLive.com. Tickets are going quick. We'd love to see you out there if you are ever so inclined, Dan.
Agree.
All right. Fun show. Thank you, one and all, again, for your continued support. We are rounding the bend here, getting into the final weeks of the season, but we wanted to freshen it up and keep everybody on their toes. For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks again for downloading, listening, playing along at home. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. Stay solid.
Peace.